Alan Winde, the Premier of the Western Cape, is calling for the relaxation of restrictions in the province as the number of COVID-19 infections decline. Now, for more on the province, I am joined by Alan Winde. Premier, thank you so much for speaking to us. I suppose a little bit of congratulations on the news in your part of the country.
Yes, thank you very much. We are, you wake up every day with a knot in your stomach because of the numbers, and I have been doing that, I think, for almost a year now. But of course, it gets worse when you go into the peak of these waves. But yeah, the numbers are looking way better. The indicators are looking good. So the test positivity rate is coming down. I monitor the beds every day, and you can see the bed numbers are starting to come down. The entry indicators are coming down. So it really is. It's looking a lot better. We have definitely plateaued and are now getting to the other side of this peak.
Now, it's also been suggested that you are calling for swimming at the beach and the ban on the sale of alcohol to be removed or relaxed. Is that correct?
Correct. Obviously, everything to do with this pandemic is, number one, you've got to learn as we go. We definitely learned a lot in the first wave. We had to rejig everything at the start of the second wave because much of it had to change because of the variant strain change in the actual virus itself. It was much more aggressive in its infection of the virus, or the infection rate was more aggressive. We've used way more than double the amount of oxygen in the peak. We used 27 tons a day in the peak in the first wave. We used over 85 tons a day in the peak of the second wave. So learned a lot, but also remember that everything we do is always got to be done in balance. And of course, at the moment, when you strengthen your restrictions to try and make sure you don't run out of beds in your hospitals, of course, when you start to see that slacken off, we've got to make sure that the second pandemic, which is one of hunger and starvation, is also not given, or you've got to sort of mitigate against that one. So it is about finding that balance. And right now, I'm not advocating for a full opening of alcohol or even a full pushing back of the curfew. We're saying a partial opening of alcohol sales, a pushing back of the curfew until 11 o'clock at night, allow restaurants to operate until 10 o'clock at night. So it's not about saying fully open. We're not really out of the woods yet. We're going down the other side. But in getting the livelihoods and lives balanced right, we also need to make sure that we open up some of that. And then, of course, for me, the beaches. In the garden route, they were the first to be closed down. We've always said that open and fresh air is much better than closed rooms and malls. The beaches, we think, should never have been closed. But we passed the holiday season. We passed those big pressure days on the beaches in South Africa. And of course, the coastal economy is also key. It's all linked to much of the jobs and much of that unemployment and hunger that I spoke about. So we've got to make sure that we enable that as well. So it is about opening up the beaches as well.
Speaking of opening up things, one of the other things that you would like to do is to procure vaccines directly.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, obviously, from my lessons in business and even in government, you always have something called your risk assessment. You have to have almost a risk lens on everything that you look at. And when you say we have vaccines as a solution or part of our solution this year, we've got a third wave and possibly a fourth wave of this virus. We need to make sure that we get vaccines into the system as quickly as possible. And when you have one single entry of vaccines coming in, and also the announcement that we've only got 1.5 million coming in the next 2 months, this month and next month, that's way less than we need for our frontline workers. We've got to look after our health workers. We also need to look after our school teachers and our law enforcement, police, law enforcement officers, our municipal employees, people that are at the front of desks in our office, in our offices at all three spheres of government, helping citizens with service delivery, and of course anybody that's at risk. So we need to try and up the numbers, and so I'm saying that's a big risk for me. So I too have been making calls, looking at whether we can get vaccines into the system as well. And of course, everything I do has got to be also run according to proper rules and regulations. We believe that good governance has got to be there, so it's got to be proper procurement processes, and also anything that we get hold of must be SAPRA approved. So we've got to make sure that it goes through those proper processes. But we will definitely play our part. I have a constitutional obligation to do the best I can for the citizens of the Western Cape, and that's exactly what I will do.
Now, how far have you gone, Premier, in this procurement process? Have you engaged suppliers? Are they keen to supply? In fact, how soon would you be able to supply if you did get the go-ahead?
So in actual fact, tomorrow I've got our Treasury and Health teams together to look at the methodologies of procurement, make sure that they're all in place. So that meeting is tomorrow. I have been making calls. In actual fact, on Friday, one of the calls of an AstraZeneca supply, which we're not even ready for in the Western Cape. So we've sent it through to national government to say, here is a further 1 million doses. Make sure that obviously I can only make an introduction. We've got to go through that supply. I've got another sort of pipeline we're looking at. So, it's imminent, and there seems to be the availability of supply doesn't seem to be too much of a problem. I obviously also am focusing on AstraZeneca first, because that seems to be the first vaccine that will be approved by SAPRA in South Africa. And then, of course, also only looking at the ones that probably will get sooner approval for. If there are 160 different companies vaccine companies trying for different vaccines, they could take a very long time. We need to focus on the ones that we can get in quickly. Of course, that's my mandate. I've got to do whatever's best and in any way to save lives in our province. And again, it's about lives and livelihoods. But of course, not only in the Western Cape, if I can get supply that will help the South African government and make sure that we get as many vaccines into our market as possible, as quickly as possible, so that we build up our immunity in South Africa, so that we can actually get back to work, so we can actually start focusing on that second pandemic.
You've undoubtedly had conversations with the Minister of Health. What has that yielded?
Sorry, I didn't quite get that.
So you've obviously had discussions with the Minister of Health. Is he receptive to your proposals?
Well, I'm not sure. I hope so. Yesterday, I messaged him that we have sent through to the officials another possibility of another 1 million doses. He did reply back to me. We have been in conversation. Obviously, he still supports the single entry, one entry of vaccines. I believe that we've got to open it up. But I will play my part. But I will also try to get as many as I can at the best price that I can, in the interests of my province, but also in the interests of South Africa.
Now, obviously, there are a limited number of suppliers of the vaccines. Do you not feel that your intervention in many ways will act, so to speak, against government and the efforts that government is trying to make to bring in the vaccine as quickly as possible?
I've got to try to do the best as I can. I see it as a risk, so I'm focusing to make sure that we mitigate and minimize that risk. And again, I've sworn allegiance to the Constitution and in support of the best that I can for the citizens of my province. I'm also a South African, so I will obviously I have to look out for in the best interests of in everything that I do for the citizens of this province. But again, I will fight when I need to fight. I will disagree when I need to disagree, but I will also try and work with and make sure that that we get the best deal we can. I'm engaging with manufacturers. I'm engaging with pharmaceutical companies who perhaps even supply companies. At the end of the day, we've got to get the best deal that we can. And we've got to do it quickly. We've got to make sure that we mitigate the risk. And as I said, there's a third wave on its way. We're just peaking out and starting to go down from the first wave, but there's no time like now.
Hugo Ribatika, Premier of the Western Cape, thank you so much for speaking to us.